So 310, we're starting with the quadratic formula. So you need a calculator today. We're going to go through about 3 of these, maybe more, maybe less, depends how we do. And what I need you to realize is the quadratic formula can be like your lifesaver. It can save you from any quadratic problem. It always works. Sometimes you have to rearrange some stuff, but it still works. And what I mean by that is, I could have this very same problem, and I could write it like this. And I could go, okay, use the quadratic formula. And the thing about that is I have to rearrange it, I have to reorganize it so that it looks like it does right there, because I want it in standard form. Now, all the problems we're giving you are in standard form, so they're all set up, they're ready to go. But if you ever run into a problem where you're just like, I have no idea how to do this, you can always use the quadratic formula. It's your best friend, okay? Now, the other thing I'll say, sometimes, instead of that, we could give you that. And some of you are going to go, this is A, this is B, and this is C. And the only one that's correct is C, because that's our constant. So A, B, and C does not always go in order. We can mix them up. A, B, and C are attached to certain variables. So A is always attached to x squared. B is always attached to the x. And C is always your constant. It's the one that doesn't have x. So if things are messed up, if they're rearranged, reorganize it so it looks nice. And then do the quadratic formula. Okay? All right. We're going to get started by putting 0 there, like we always do. And then we're going to solve this using the quadratic. Now, the main reason I'm using the quadratic on this one is I look to factor it. It doesn't factor. That's not going to be nice. So that's a big hint. If I look to square root, I can't do the square root method because that right there, right? If I have a bx term, if I have an x in the problem, not an x squared, just an x, can't do the square root method. And then finally, I could complete the square, but every problem that you have ever completed the square on had the number 1 right there. When that's not the number 1, it changes. It gets a little more complex. So if you have a leading coefficient that's not 1, don't complete the square. Instead, we're going to do that quadratic. So when I write the quadratic out, I start like this. I go -7, right? So opposite of b, plus or minus the square root. And there's a couple things that I like to do. I like to actually square b right off the bat. It's one less thing I have to type in my calculator. So I'm going to have 49 minus 4 times 3 times 3. And you notice that when I write this up here, if I have a negative, I put parentheses around it. If I don't have a negative, I don't put parentheses because it's one less thing that I have to type in on my calculator. And then finally, 2a, what's a? What is it? 3. Yeah. So if I have 2 times 3, I'm confident that we can do that as well, and I'm just going to write 6 down here. So I do some of the work throughout the problem, not all of it. What is b squared minus 4ac? What's another name for that? If you had a quiz on it, if you had a lesson on it, b squared minus 4ac. I even pointed it out. What do we call it? It tells us how many solutions we're going to have. The discriminant. Yeah. So the discriminant tells us if we have 1, 2, or 0 real solutions. Now we know that we either have 2, 1, or 2 imaginary solutions. But so I calculate the discriminant next. And so I'm going to have, we're not going to do 8, so if you want to work that way, you can. So I'm going to have x equals -7 plus or minus the square root. You're going to give me that number, and I'm going to have 6 right here. So what is 49 minus 4 times 3 times 3? Don't put it in the square root, okay? Because if it's negative, you're going to get a domain error. Just type in 49 minus 4 times 3 times 3. What'd you get? 13. I need a couple echoes. I got one head bob. Okay, I'm getting some more. That's good. So we get 13. Give me two numbers that multiply to make 13. 1 and 13. Yeah, 13 is a prime number, so we can't break it down. We can't do anything with that. What about 7 divided by 6? Can I reduce that as a fraction nicely? No. So this right here is my answer. Now I know that you've seen the quadratic formula before. You've seen it Math 1 or Algebra 1. You've seen it in geometry. A little bit in intermediate if you dove on that route. But do we have any questions about this? Number 9. I want you to try starting it. We're going to finish it together. But I want you to just try to enter everything into the formula. So you're going to have x equals, you have the formula on your page, have the bar, right? Fill everything in that you can. So as I was walking around, I saw a lot of people that did get to that point right there. And I'll just remind, we got A, B, and C. And so on the bottom here, I had gone 2 times A, 2 times 4, and that's what gave me 8. Now, I got negative 12 plus or minus the square root of what number? 0. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird problem. But it goes back to what we've talked about with the discriminant. So if I have 0 right here, what is the square root of 0? Come on. Shout it out. Shout it out. 0. Yeah. Okay. So, folks, if you know the square root of a number, you have to calculate the rest of this. So if this was the square root of 4, then I would have negative 12 plus 2 divided by 8, and then I would have negative 12 minus 2 divided by 8. Now I would actually have to put that number down. Okay. Now 0 doesn't really do a whole lot because the square root of 0 is just 0. So I am going to have negative 12 divided by 8 because if I add 0 to negative 12, I get negative 12. If I subtract 0 from negative 12, I still get negative 12. And that's why when the discriminant is 0, we have the one solution that shows up. Now, what's the simplified version of negative 12 over 8? Questions? Remember, your calculator can tell you negative 12 divided by 8 is negative 3 over 2. So if you ever get a really big fraction, check it out, type it in. I'll also say, if you get a really big number and you're taking the square root of it, you can type in what's the square root of this number. And if it gives you like 15, sweet. You don't have to do anything else because it was a perfect square. You just didn't know what it was. Any questions on that? 3 minutes to do number 10. To get as far as you can. You don't have to finish, but 3 minutes to get as far as you can. Feel free to work together as well. What's going inside the square root right there? Got it. Negative 16. So, what's the square root of 16? 4. So the square root of negative 16 is? What? Not negative 4. 4i. Yeah. So that negative just becomes an I. So I get 4i divided by 2. Now, we can simplify this. And so if it helps you to think about it as you're dividing both terms, as writing it like this, go ahead and do that. If you want to skip this part and just go to the end, you can do that too. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Then I have plus or minus 4i divided by 2 is going to be 2i. So that is going to be my solution, mainly right there. Okay? What questions do we have? It looked pretty good as I was walking around. Can't get to this half of the room. But if you're ready, you can flip to the following page. And so we have 4 problems left. And so what I'm going to say is the difficult part of this chapter is, we looked at solving by factoring, which we did pretty good at. We looked at solving by the square root method, also pretty good at. Quadratic formula, I will say I've been impressed today so far. And then the last option is completing the square, which is probably the hardest, but some of you think it's easier, so that's fine. And, overall you're doing good. The difficult part of the chapter is what happens when you get a problem and you're not told how to solve it. That's what we're going to do now. And I'm not going to tell you how to solve it. So we're going to look at 15, 16, 17, and 18. And I'm going to just wait until you have an idea of what to do. One class, we went down one rabbit hole, and then we decided, we're not doing that. And that's okay. You might do that on the test. Another class, we did the same thing, different problem though. So let's see how we do. I will give you a piece of advice though to start, and that is you always want everything on the same side so that it equals 0. And if you recognize a shortcut, you can use it. I'm just not going to tell you. But so for this first one, for 15, I will say that I'm going to move everything from the right side to the left side because I want my x squared to be positive. So I'm going to have minus x squared plus 3x minus 9. And I combine my like terms. So that's the amount of help that I'm going to give you. Now, as a class, you decide, what do you want to do? Where do you want to start? And if you say something, I will do what you said correct mathematically, and you can see if it's what you meant to do or not. So what do we want to start doing? Go for it, Aiden. All right, we can put it in the quadratic formula. Now, I normally don't tell you if what we're doing is right or wrong. I just kind of go with it, but that's right. Quadratic formula is the way to go on this problem. Doesn't factor. I have a middle term, so I can't do the square root. And I could complete the square, but that's what the first class did today. You get some really nice fractions, and after half a page, they're like, we're done. Never again. So quadratic formula was a great choice. do you get as your discriminant? What's inside the square root? 65. Give me two numbers that multiply to make 65. Other than 1 and 65. What are two other numbers? 13 and 5. Nice. So folks, if you ever have a 5, you do have to check. Sometimes it works out pretty nice and you can take the square root of it. So if I have a 5, I can always divide it by 5. So that's something that I hope you get to. Now 5 and 13 are both prime numbers. So my solution is right there. Done. Well, in terms of choices for solving, we're 1 for 1. Fastest way through. I will give no more hints now. So number 2, 16. How do you want to start the problem? Okay. Now what? Make your choice. What do you think we should do next? It can be wrong. It doesn't have to be right. There's more than one way to do it. I like the square root. It's just one step too early. Okay? We gotta divide by 7 first. Then we're gonna square root. Okay? So I like that. That's good. So I'm gonna erase this and that. Now I'm going to do the square root because you already told me to do the square root, and I get x equals what? 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 It's really close. All right, we got there. As a team, we got there. All right, that's it. Flip the page if you're ready. If you're not, ask a question. $17. How do we start this? What's 0 divided by x? So then x has to be how many solutions do I need? How many solutions do I have? Huh.
I know how to word it.
Hold up. Don't go any further, okay? So I'll give you your chance, okay? Now here's the deal. Do we know what x is? No, otherwise the point of this problem would be pointless, because if I know what x is, I can just write what x is, and I'm done, okay? Now if I divide by x, and I divide by x, we actually have to add a restriction. Can I divide by every single number out there? What number can you not divide by? 0. So if I do this, I have to add x cannot equal 0. So I'm putting restrictions on the problem, but I don't know it. That might actually be one of my solutions. So this is a very common thought, is we can divide by x. But if you divide by x, you're introducing restrictions, you're introducing new things to the problem. So we can't do that. All right, so we're going to backtrack. Or I shouldn't say we can't do that. You guys are not going to do that in this class, though. Redemption.
I wanted to go with the grids for the common factor.
Ah,
That's what I was trying to do.
that I like. Now, I still get x equals 4, right? Because I take the opposite. Good on that. What's this equal? Remember we said each of them equal to 0. So this one's nice and easy because I said it equal to 0. Well, there's no work, so that equals 0. That's why it didn't work in the last piece, because we set up our restriction saying it can't equal 0, but yet it does equal 0. So it's a tricky problem. All right, so this is good. So we factored. Last one. What are we going to do? It's going to kill me a little bit if none of you get this one. What method? What method? It's your favorite movie. That's not your favorite movie. That could be your favorite movie. Shrike method. All right. So I'll start the problem by saying you divide by 2. Go get me an answer. Finish the rest of it. Try it out. What's this equal? What? Say it. You said it. Plus or minus? Perfect. We minus the 3, and I end up with x equals negative 3 plus or minus I square roots of 5. What questions do we have? So I'll just reiterate again. You know, when you're doing these problems, 311, it tells you how to solve them. Solve it however it tells you. 310 does not. So if it doesn't tell you how to solve it and you have a method that you like to solve it with and it works, do that. Okay?